A man walks into a meeting barefoot. 12 minutes later, he walks out with $4 billion. No due diligence. No real questions. Just a chart on an iPad that went up and to the right. This is the story of WeWork and the most spectacular corporate implosion of the decade. The man at the center, he'd walk away with $0.7 billion for failing. Let me show you exactly how. January 2019. WeWork is valued at $47 billion. More than Ford. More than Marriott, Hilton, and Hyatt combined. 527 locations. 38 countries. 12,000 employees. 6 weeks later, $47 billion becomes $8 billion. $39 billion. Gone. The fastest wealth destruction in startup history. But to understand the fall, you need to understand the rise. And it starts with one man. Adam Neumann, Israeli immigrant, arrived in New York in 2001 with nothing. His early businesses failed. Baby clothes with knee pads, collapsible high heels, terrible ideas. But he learned something crucial from those failures. He learned that the product doesn't matter. The story does. And Adam Neumann could tell a story like no one else. He wasn't a tech genius or a financial wizard. He was something more dangerous. He was a salesman who made people believe. 2010. Neumann launches WeWork with a simple model. Sign long-term leases on buildings. Divide the space. Rent it short-term to freelancers and startups. Arbitrage the difference. Nothing new. A company called Regus had done this since 1989. But here's where Neumann's genius came in. He convinced investors that WeWork wasn't a real estate company. It was a tech company. Same business, completely different valuation math. Real estate trades at 10 times revenue. Tech, 50 times, 100 times. The pitch worked. 2012. 16 million raised. 2013. 150 million. 2014. 300 million. The money was accelerating. And Neumann? 6'5", long hair, walking into meetings barefoot, drinking tequila. He didn't look like a CEO. He looked like a rock star. He told investors WeWork would be worth $1 trillion, that they'd expand into schools, gyms, apartments, banking, that they would. And this was in official documents. Elevate the world's consciousness for a company that rented desks, and investors kept writing checks. The company culture became almost cult-like. Retreats with flowing alcohol. Employees expected to believe in the mission. The line between startup and religion getting blurrier by the day. But there was a problem nobody wanted to talk about. For all the money flowing in, WeWork was bleeding cash. They lost money on every single desk. The more they grew, the more they lost. In 2018 alone, $0.9 billion in losses. And here's the structural flaw. WeWork signed long-term leases, 15, 20-year commitments, but rented space short-term month to month. If anything went wrong, WeWork would owe billions, while their tenants could walk away tomorrow. But in 2016, none of that mattered, because SoftBank was watching, and what happened next would change everything. Masayoshi Son, the man behind SoftBank's Vision Fund, a $100 billion war chest, the largest technology investment fund in history. Son had made his fortune betting big. His investment in Alibaba turned $200 million into over $100 billion, the greatest return in venture history. With returns like that, Son had convinced Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi to trust him with their billions. Now he had $100 billion to deploy, and he was in a hurry. In 2017, Son visited WeWork. He toured the office for exactly 12 minutes. Not 12 hours, not 12 days of due diligence. 12 minutes. And in those 12 minutes, he committed $4.4 billion. Let me do the math. $4 billion, 12 minutes. 360 SIX million per minute, based on a chart Neumann drew on an iPad in the back of a car. A line that went up and to the right. When SoftBank put $4 billion into WeWork, it was a signal. Other investors piled in. The valuation exploded. 10 billion, 20 billion, 47 billion. WeWork went into hyperdrive. They opened offices everywhere. China, India, Latin America, Europe, They started a school called We Grow, a gym called Rise by We, an apartment company called We Live. They acquired companies nobody asked them to acquire. And Adam Neumann? He was living like a king. A $60 million private jet, paid for by the company, multiple mansions, personal investments in wave pool companies. But the most audacious move? He trademarked the word we, then sold that trademark back to his own company for $5.9 million. He bought buildings personally, then leased them to WeWork, paying himself rent with company money. He took $700 million in personal loans using company stock as collateral. He cashed out hundreds of millions while telling employees their stock would make them rich. And the board, they saw everything. They knew. And they did nothing, because as long as the valuation kept going up, everyone was getting rich on paper. By January 2019, WeWork was valued at $47 billion, the highest valuation of any private company in America. And they were ready for the final act, an IPO that would turn paper billions into real cash. But to go public, WeWork had to file an S-1, a document that would reveal everything to the public. The real numbers, the real risks, the real Adam Neumann. In August 2019, they filed it. And when people actually read it, the reaction was immediate. The S-1 revealed catastrophe. Point 1. Losses of $1.9 billion in a single year. Point 2. They spent nearly $2 for every dollar they earned. Point 3. $47 billion in lease commitments while tenants could leave any time. Point 4. Neumann controlled the company through shares giving him TEN votes each. He could never be outvoted. Point 5. 4 pages of the filing were dedicated solely to listing Adam Neumann's conflicts of interest. 4 pages of one man's conflicts. Wall Street's reaction was brutal. Within hours, analysts were tearing it apart. NYU professor Scott Galloway wrote a viral analysis. WeWork was worth somewhere between 0 and maybe 10 billion, not 47 billion. Maybe TEN. The IPO roadshow became a funeral march. Fidelity said no. BlackRock said no. The biggest funds in the world rejected WeWork. The $47 billion valuation began to collapse. 30 billion. 20. 15. 10. The IPO was postponed, then postponed again, and behind closed doors, the board finally acted. On the 24th of September 2019, Adam Neumann was forced out as CEO of his own company. But here's where the story becomes infuriating. Adam Neumann didn't just walk away. He walked away with $1.7 billion. Let me say that again, $1.7 billion. To leave a company he had nearly destroyed. That's more than the lifetime earnings of most people, times 100. Meanwhile, 2,400 employees lost their jobs, their severance, a fraction of what Neumann received. Many got nothing at all. In just 6 weeks, WeWork's valuation collapsed from $47 billion to $8 billion, $39 billion in value. Gone. The fastest destruction of wealth in startup history. SoftBank had to bail them out. Another $9.5 billion just to keep WeWork alive. They were throwing good money after bad. Total losses for SoftBank, $14 billion, one of the worst investment disasters in history. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Fidelity, T. Rowe Price, the supposed smartest money in the world, all took massive losses, all believed Adam Neumann's story, all wrote the checks. WeWork limped into 2020. And then the universe delivered the ultimate irony, a global pandemic that emptied offices worldwide. COVID-19 did what common sense couldn't. In November 2023, WeWork filed for bankruptcy. The damage? $18 billion invested, $14 billion lost by SoftBank alone, thousands of jobs destroyed, landlords ruined, small businesses displaced. And Adam Neumann? He bought a $112 million mansion in Malibu. No criminal charges, no personal liability, no real consequences. The system worked exactly as designed, for the people it was designed to protect. And here's the part that should make you angry. Adam Neumann is already working on his next company. In 2022, he raised $350 million for apartment buildings. Real estate again. The same investors who lost billions. lined up to give him more. So what's the real lesson here? It's not about WeWork. It's not even about Adam Neumann. It's about how the game is structured. Lesson 1. Valuation is not value. WeWork was never worth $47 billion. That number was a mass hallucination shared by people who should have known better. Lesson 2. Charisma without accountability is dangerous. Adam Neumann was so good at selling the dream that nobody asked if the dream made any sense. They just wrote checks. Lesson 3. When downside is socialized but upside is privatized, the wrong people win. Neumann kept the billions. Everyone else absorbed the losses. And lesson 4. This will happen again. Different company, different founder, same playbook, because the incentives haven't changed. 47 billion became 8 billion, became bankruptcy. Thousands of jobs erased. Billions destroyed. One family made richer than most people can imagine. And Adam Neumann, still getting meetings, still raising money, still telling stories. Because in this world, that's enough. This was the downfall, where every empire falls. And we show you exactly how. If this story made you angry, made you think, made you see how the game really works, subscribe. Because there's always another empire about to fall. The downfall. Subscribe now.